Hello, everyone, and welcome to Tell Me Why, a short, sharp podcast for busy Beatles people in the know or busy Beatles people who want to be in the know. My name is Jude Kessler. I am the author of the uh, very large and heavy John Lennon series. So far, a series of 5 books. The sixth one is coming out in March. The book release party is at the Fest for Beatles fans at the New York Metro Fest, March 28th through the 30th. I so hope you can be there. We're going to have live music. Scott Erickson's going to perform and food and fun. And it will be Shades of Life Part 2, which is the end. This is the first 8 months of 1965. And that's going to pick up on the 13th of August, 1965. It's just this big. And it takes you to the end of the year. It actually takes you into the 1st of January, 1966, when John is grappling with his LSD use, which Cynthia is not participating in. She tried it 3 times and it was miserable for her. And they're beginning to have problems because of that. He and Paul are starting to have a few problems. And they want to stop touring, but Brian will not hear of it. And the beginning of 1966 was a very tough time. So it won't really end very happily, but it ends with a cliffhanger, which I've never done before. So join us for the series. The first 3 books are sold out, but you can get all 3 of those books if you listen to the audiobooks. If I can get it so you can see this. The audiobook of She Loves You, read by Scott McKinley, who did 183 voices. 183 voices, including the Beatles and Brian. He studied them all. He learned them. He had to do Sid Bernstein and everyone that the Beatles toured with. And he really spent hours and hours and hours learning these voices and vetting them so that he could do the audiobook. So you get an hour synopsis of volume 1, an hour synopsis of volume 2, and then 31 hours of 1965 along with the Beatles. So that is the way to get started if you didn't get the first few books. So today, I am so excited for lots of reasons. First of all, my guest today is the first second gen fan that I've had on Tell Me Why. I've had lots of first gen people, and I had 1 third gen, but never a second gen fan. And second generation fans know their Beatles. They know John, Paul, George, and Ringo. And my guest today does. She knows it like her hometown, which is New York, well, Long Island, but, close enough. She knows it like she knows her Mets, whom she really loves, and they were this close to getting in the World Series. She knows it like she knows her new home of sunny Florida, and she shares it with you because on the 24th of January, which I know because it's my sister's birthday and my grandson's birthday, and they fight about whose birthday it really is, 24th of January, 2022, she landed her dream job. How many people can say that you have your dream job? She didn't do it by passively wishing and hoping. She went after it, and she got her own radio show weekdays at noon, prime time, when people are having lunch and can listen to the radio, ideal time. Or for those of you in California at 9, you're getting up and having your cup of coffee and listening in on the Beatles Channel, Sirius XM radio. Woohoo! She's hailed as a bright new voice, and that couldn't describe her better because she is always happy and upbeat and kind and sweet. And we are very, very honored to have with us today the one and only Caitlin Larkin. Caitlin, welcome to Tell Me Why.
Thank you so much, Jude. Making me cry over here. That was a beautiful introduction. I appreciate it.
Well, I know you have added so much. They have so many people that are beloved. I mean, Tom Frangione, how do you get more beloved than Tom Frangione?
Absolutely.
But you really have added such heart to Sirius XM, and good for them. Tell everyone, and we're skipping ahead a little bit, but we got to go to this first because you are an influencer. I think you've posted 11,000 posts on X. What is you have 2.37 thousand followers on YouTube. You're the CEO of Beatle Talk on TikTok, and yet you dreamed of a job on Sirius XM and got it. So tell everyone how that came about. Tell me why you wanted to do it and how it happened.
Sure. So this goes back years and years and years. So little baby Caitlin, living on Long Island, loved listening to Joe Johnson's Beatle Brunch every Sunday. And he's a big part of this. And so my mom and I, every Sunday, we would make pancakes together, turn on Beatle Brunch. And I went, man, that would be really cool if I could do that someday. And funnily enough, at the Fest for Beatles fans in Las Vegas in 2008, which was my graduation from high school present, I got to meet Joe Johnson and found out that he was actually living in South Florida near where, my family and I lived. And so he and I developed this relationship, and he became a huge mentor for me. So fast forward to 2017, I have dabbled in radio here and there. I even interned at a radio station in West Palm Beach when I was in college, fell in love with morning show radio. But it kind of just didn't work out for me. I ended up moving to Orlando, Florida, where I became the memorabilia tour guide at the Hard Rock. I did that job for about 9 years, giving Beatles memorabilia tours, which was a highlight of my life. But 2017 rolls around, and I'm just kind of scrolling through the internet, and I see that there are Beatle fans posting their Beatles collections on YouTube. And I'm like, that's something that I could totally do. I have a really cool Beatles collection. Why not? And it also turned into I need to collect my own vinyl because growing up, I basically stole, dad's records. I stole mom's records and listened to Beatles music that way and realized that I didn't own any myself. So my YouTube channel kind of became this, let's see how, many Beatles pieces of vinyl that I can collect, showing off, 45s, vinyl, new releases, doing album reviews. And that's kind of how I started getting my social media following. So 2020 rolls around, and it's the pandemic. And I'm chatting with a friend of mine, and she goes, Caitlin, have you been on TikTok yet? And I'm like, I've heard of TikTok, but I've not, discovered it or downloaded it or anything like that. And she's like, you got to go on TikTok. It's just fun, mindless scrolling. It's really fun. It's, at that point in time, you could only do 60-second videos. And it's just it's like Vine, but better. And I was like, okay, great. I'm totally into it. And so as I'm scrolling and getting into TikTok and doing the whole For You page thing, I noticed that there wasn't a lot of people posting Beatles content at the time. It was basically just me and, funnily enough, Skylar Moody, who you have had on your show. And that's how she and I became friends. So I started posting on this day in Beatles history videos, one for every day. And it caught a bit of a following, plus the following that I already had on YouTube kind of meshed together. And so a year goes by of me doing these videos, and it's literally the 1 year anniversary. And I go, do I really want to do this again? And there was a part of me that was like, well, you'll keep doing it. There are new people signing up for TikTok every day. Somebody new is going to discover you. But to be completely honest, Jude, my heart wasn't in it. And if your heart's not in it, you can't do it. So I was like, okay, what's the next step? What else can I do on TikTok? And I was just watching all these videos one day. And there was someone, I wish I could remember the user because this basically inspired my whole journey. There was someone dancing to a Lizzo song. every single day until they could get Lizzo to like the video or comment on it. And I was like, man, that's genius. I wish that the Beatles were on TikTok so I could do something similar at this point in time. They didn't have any TikTok presence, which so much has changed in the last couple of years. So, I'm scrolling through, I'm thinking of things. At this point, I'm doing radio in Orlando, just doing traffic and weather reports and stuff like that, nothing major, commercials and stuff. So I've learned how to produce and edit audio, and I was like, oh, I wonder if Sirius XM is on TikTok. Because if they see it, maybe they'll show the Beatles Channel people, and that would be really cool. And so I decided to make fake radio breaks, one every single day, until the folks at SiriusXM commented or liked it. And Jude, that was all I was going for, was a like and a comment. That was it. I thought it would just be a really fun little project to do. And it turned into this whole thing where on the ninth day of doing this little campaign of mine, I got a DM from my now boss, our program director, Adam Saltzman, which, if any of you guys have been to the New York Fest, he's made a couple appearances on panels and such. And he was like, hey, I really love your energy and would love to talk to you sometime. And I was just like, oh my God, this is great. So at that point, didn't even think that a job was possible. He started off by having me on the Fab Forum because what was funny, at that moment, the Beatles then made a TikTok account. So it was newsworthy. And then they had me do a My Fab Four where I picked, my four favorite Beatles songs and introduced them on air, which anybody can do, by the way. If you are a Sirius XM listener, you can always do a My Fab Four and submit it. If you want to be a guest DJ, it's always really fun. I love listening to people's My Fab Fours. And so about a month goes by and I don't hear anything. And I get a text from Adam and he goes, hey, if you're not doing anything, do you mind hopping on a Zoom call with myself, Lou Simon, who of course is the president of the Beatles Channel, and then Jeff Jones of Apple? Yeah, can you hop on a Zoom call really quick? And I'm just like, are you kidding me? It was the most nerve-wracking thing in the entire world. I'm literally sitting here in my office where I am right now. And of course, on a Zoom call, when you're on with multiple people, you have no idea who you're gonna run into first. Jeff Jones was the first person in there.
Oh my gosh.
And it was like I'm shaking like a leaf. And so I wish that they had recorded this conversation. I wish I had it just for my own personal archive. But long story short, which I know is way too late, they offered me the position, and the words that I
On that Zoom call?
on that Zoom call.
Oh, can you just jump on the Zoom call? And then at the end of the impromptu, unplanned, you hadn't even had a chance to rehearse or know you were going to do this. You get a job with Sirius XM.
Yes, and the best part of that, and the part that I really wish that I had on video saved for myself, was the moment they told me that I was going to get the job. And Jeff Jones goes, welcome to the family.
Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. And
yeah,
just to note, it was day number nine that they noticed.
that's right. Lucky number 9.
John would appreciate that. I'm sure he had a hand in that.
I sure hope so.
That is awesome. That
Yeah.
is congratulations. And do you love it as much as you thought you would love? Well, you didn't really know you were going to do it, but do you
No.
love it?
Oh, of course. I absolutely like it. It's so funny because I think back on me in high school where I really didn't know what I wanted to do. I had a teacher who literally pulled me aside and said, Caitlin, I'm really worried about you. What are you going to do with your life? What career are you going to have? And of course, at that time, I didn't think of radio broadcasting as a career. I wish I had. I actually went to college for graphic design. But I did that just because it was the most creative thing that my community college offered. Um, but yeah, so it's really amazing now that if I could talk to 18-year-old Caitlin, who is really scared for her future, it's like everything's going to be even better than okay. Everything is amazing. If I could also talk to like baby Caitlin, 5-year-old Caitlin, my goodness, just we did it. We did it. You technically work for the Beatles.
Yeah.
It's unbelievable.
So many parallels in this story because I'm sure you know, of course, you know that John went to school for graphic design
Yeah.
because that was the most creative thing that he could do. He didn't know what he wanted to do. And I was obsessed with that band, but we said, all right, if I've got to go to college, I'll go in graphic design. Of course, he was thrown out of graphic design, ended up in lettering because the only person that would put up with him was Arthur Ballard. But um, there's so many parallels in the story. He doesn't know. He goes, yeah, oh, it's amazing. That's all I have to say. It's amazing.
Yeah.
So, does Joe Johnson know what a role he played?
Oh, absolutely. He and I still keep in touch.
That's amazing. I know
Yeah.
he's so proud of you, and he is such a sweet, wonderful guy. We are doing our tradition is on my little focal points webinar that I do. We every other month do a webinar, and for Christmas we are doing a holiday Beatles holiday gathering, and Joe and I are co-hosting it.
So I got to show you my mouse pad. Joe signed this for me in 2008 when we first met.
Oh,
And I still use this every day. So I always have that reminder of him and how much, he and Beetle Brunch have impacted me and literally changed my life.
mine
So I owe a lot to him.
to be the Eggman. That is the question.
Nice.
Yours is very, very cool. So one of my closest friends, Lena Stagg, who did the podcast, she said with me for about 10 years, is a second gen fan, and she knows Beatles. I mean, she really knows the details. So as a second gen fan, do you feel like, I mean, tell me why you got so interested in the Beatles? Was it just that Beatles Brunch podcast? Was it your parents? What pulled you to the Beatles?
It was mostly my parents. So, for those of you that don't know this story, and I'm sorry for those of you who do, but I feel like it's the best way to get to know me. My parents met at a bar in 1975. It was my dad's 20th birthday. My mom was 18 at the time. And so he sees my mom. He's nervous to go and talk to her to ask her out. So, of course, he has some liquid courage and he goes over and says, "You are the most beautiful woman I have ever seen. Can I take you out on a date?" My mom's like, "Absolutely not." So my father goes, "Well, why?" She goes, "I don't know you." My dad goes, "Well, if you knew me, would you go out with me?" And she's like, "No, not happening." So as my dad turns to walk away, completely defeated, I have to ask him about this. I need to know what was that thing inside him that made him turn around. But he turns around to my mother and he goes, "I bet you're not a Beatles fan." And she goes, "Of course I am. They're my favorite band." So it's literally because of the Beatles that my brother and I are born, that we are here in this world. And so just listening to their music on long car trips, I talk about this often on my show. My dad had this mixtape that he made for long car rides, and it was just random Beatles songs and lots of like different B-sides and stuff that you wouldn't find on a regular like hits compilation. And then by the age of 2, I was obsessed with Yellow Submarine. Obsessed. I used to have, a shelf of VHS tapes. And I remember being 2 years old and my dad picking me up and he'd go, "Okay, Kate, what movie do you want to watch today?" And I'd always point to Yellow Submarine. And so from Yellow Submarine came, A Hard Day's Night, Help, Magical Mystery Tour, and even documentaries like The Complete Beatles and Imagine John Lennon. If it had the Beatles in it, I had to watch it. I was just addicted. I don't know what it is. It's just, and I get goosebumps still just talking about it. There's something about that that just brings me such joy. And I think also the fact that sadly my parents split up. And so I think about those early childhood memories of us being in the car together as a family, and it brings me happiness and joy. And the Beatles mean so much to me. And I just remember being a little kid on the internet, it was a new thing. Like, oh, what can I look up about the Beatles? And I would learn everything that I possibly could because I also wanted to compete with the grown-ups that were talking Beatles. I wanted to be able to have those conversations. So any books, magazines, you name it, I would watch it or read it.
That it just, you echo everything that I feel. That you can't explain if you don't live in that Beatles world, if you don't know all of the quotes from Help, if you don't, thousands wouldn't. And, I mean, if you don't know all the little quips about liking seasoning in me soup, you can't get what we feel. But you've got it. And when you've got it, you've got it.
It's a season ticket, Jude.
Course it is. Of course it is. Well, walk us through a typical day on your show. What kind of things do you present? And having to do this every single day, you weekdays, right? 5 days in a row.
Yes, ma'am. Monday through Friday.
Oh, that's got to be, I mean, that is big to have an hour program. So when people tune in, what can they expect?
Yeah, so the basic build of the Beatles channel, which you can find not only in my show, but everybody that you basically listen to, because we have a certain, stuff that we have to abide by, is that we have, you'll every single hour you will hear a John solo song, a Paul solo song, George and Ringo. We can play as many Beatles tunes as we want to. Then we have one influence and one cover every hour. But of course, when you listen during my hour, you've got Caitlin's Cover Corner, where I handpick some of my favorite covers, or even sometimes my not so favorite covers. But that's just because I want people to like hear this stuff and really talk about it. I love that I try and be as interactive with my listeners as I possibly can. I always tell people you can find me on Twitter. Sorry, I will never call it X. You can also email me BeatleKate, CAIT at SiriusXM.com. I love being interactive with my listeners and having these conversations that go beyond my one little hour of my program. Um, but yeah, so we have the cover corner, and then on Wednesdays, I always end my shows with Wednesday Wings. I'm a huge Wings fan, so I love that, I can incorporate that fandom into it as well. And I always try and play, a particular maybe, B-side or a rarity. Or sometimes if I have silly love songs stuck in my head, I'll play silly love songs. But yeah, I always try and keep it as topical as I can, bringing you, the Beatles news first. As soon as I hear something, I tell y'all. Um, and yeah, it's just an hour of fun. And I like to do it as, just you and I are talking right now, just as, fun friends hanging out, listening to Beatles tunes together. And that's basically it. I know a lot of the other DJs on there, they're a bit more like Frangione. He's the Beatles expert. And it's more like sitting down and kind of being taught, which I love. Kidding me? Tom teaches me so much. That guy knows everything. Um, but for me, it's more, hey, let's, have some fun and listen to some Beatles records together and be nerds.
You're having lunch with them. They're all sitting there. They've taken their noon lunch break, and y'all are sitting there sharing a sandwich together.
Exactly.
I love it. That is fantastic. Well, we always close the show. And by the way, right now, I'm going to put up the best way to get in touch with Caitlin, because she is, as she said, on Twitter and probably LinkedIn as well. I don't know if
That's the one place I'm not on.
Facebook and YouTube. So the best way to get in touch with her is through Linktree. And right now there should be a link up on the screen Randall do that, that gives you her Linktree account so that you can connect with her there. It's the easiest way to do that. And of course, she's a CEO of TikTok, of Beetle Talk. So don't forget that. You have to go there. But we always close the show, Caitlin, by asking the same question. What of all of John Lennon's many quotes, and it can be a song lyric or it can be something that he said, one of his quirky, wonderful quotes, which one speaks to you the most?
So this was really hard when you told me that I was going to have to answer this one. I'm like, oh, do I go with something really deep? Do I go with a favorite song lyric of mine? But the thing that I love most about John Lennon, and something that I feel like he and I kind of share, is our quirky, sarcastic sense of humor. And one of my favorite little clips is where John has finally gotten his green card. He's finally gotten his citizenship. And someone who is on the staircase asks him if he has any hard feelings towards, the Nixon administration, or I forget what it is, or who exactly, the people that had kept him from getting his green card. And John just looks at the camera and he goes, "Time wounds all heals."
Yes. He also said it when Strom Thurmond said that he should be kicked out of the country. I mean, yeah, that's perfect, isn't it?
Yes, it is. And I just feel like that just sums up John Lennon.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
love that quote.
I love it too. He has so many, and that's a great one. I thank you for choosing that one. I love it. Well, guys, listen, noon if you're on the East Coast, 11 if you're in Central Time, 9 for Mountain and Pacific. So if you're in California, 9 a.m. when you are getting up and getting going, grab that cup of coffee and tune in to Caitlin's show on the Beatles Channel, Channel 18, 18, number 9. There you go. And it is weekdays. So Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, you have a chance to spend an hour with Caitlin. And I know that you're going to do that. I am a crazy person who works all night and I sleep during the day. But every time that I have an opportunity, like I've got to travel for an appointment or something, and I'm up at noon, there you go. Caitlin's show. Thank you so much for being on the show, Caitlin. We enjoyed it. Oh my gosh, so much.
Thank you so, so much for having me. This has been such a blast, and it's so good to see you, Jude.
Well, I hope that you're going to be at the Fest for Beatles fans.
I sure hope so. I might have to have ankle surgery. I may postpone it till after. Last I saw you, I had just hurt my ankle. So yeah, I have to go under the knife at some point, which sucks. But yes, I really, really hope that I can make it to the fest this year. Fingers crossed. I hope to see you guys real soon.
Okay, well, and anything else big coming up that you want to tell people about?
Not that I can think of at the moment. No, just the usual shenanigans, like you said, on the Beatles channel Monday through Friday at noon, or the random occasions where I do get to cover for Miss Meg Griffin from 5 to 9.
Great. Thank you so much. And thank you for keeping that light shining on. That is, we appreciate it, and just keep it going. And to all of you, thanks for tuning in. And as always, try and shine on.